All right. Hey out there. It's Wednesday night, 7:30. That means it is the 573 report. I'm Gabe DeArmond. That's Mitchell 40 on the other side of your screen. We heard maybe there's going to be a football game this weekend, so we thought we would talk about that a little bit. Welcome into those of you who have gotten here on time. I'll welcome the rest of you later. But if you're here, feel free to comment, ask questions, whatever you want to do. We'll certainly get to those throughout the show, and we've actually already got one, which is very important. Bo wants to know if there's any truth to the rumors that I am entering the transfer portal. There's not, but did you see Dom Jacinto entering, or was that kind of a surprise? We'll start there because that's really the news of the day. Is that, well, other than the fact that there might actually be football for the third time. But Dominic Jacinto, wide receiver from Raytown, entered his name in the transfer portal today. I guess, Mitch, you were on the SEC teleconference. I guess Eli Drinkwood said he just kind of found out about it last night after practice.
Yeah, it was, a pretty standard quote. I mean, I think it read to some people like a little more jarring than it meant to. He basically said, yeah, talked to Dom last night and he decided this wasn't the right culture fit for him and wanted to find a better fit. And, it's just your generic answer anytime as a coach, I think you're asked about a transfer and like you said on the message board today, for those who didn't see it, these things happen when you bring in a new coach. Now, is it ideal when you are, this close to scholarship situations? Maybe not, but I don't think Dom Jacinto is going to be the difference between playing and not playing. If it gets down to it and they have 52 and he's gone, I think they would choose to play.
Because Dom Jacinto wasn't going to play on Saturday.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's really, it becomes more of a big deal when the players who are transferring are the ones like at Mississippi State, Kylan Hill is an all conference, the SEC's leading rusher, and he leaves. That's more notable than when you're talking about backup receivers, backup quarterbacks, stuff like that.
Yeah. No offense to Dominic Jacinto, but was a good kid every time I talked to him. Hopefully he goes and finds a place that he can play football. It wasn't probably going to be here because truth is he had a little trouble hanging on to the ball. I think probably got in the doghouse a little bit for one particular drop against Tennessee. He was unavailable for at least one other game this year, and hey, things happen. He had been passed by some guys, and he'll move on and find another place to play ball, and that's okay for everybody. So, again, this is the 573 report. We are brought to you guys by 573 Tees. Make sure to check them out on the internet, 573tees.com. Honestly, if you have trouble spelling tees, I kind of feel bad for you, but maybe there's somebody out there who didn't know. So tees.com. Check them out. If you go through the link on our site on the show on powermizzou.com, you can get a 10% discount. So please do that. I have a Chiefs t-shirt, a Shakespeare's t-shirt, a Columbia, Missouri hoodie, which has been appropriated by my wife, which I did get to wear once. It was very comfortable. I enjoyed it. So you guys check that out. Look, the holidays are coming up. They've got all kinds of stuff for the sports fan or for the Columbia native or whatever. So go check them out and hit like, hit subscribe, all that. Ask us your questions. We're just going to start here. We think Missouri's playing. There's no guarantee. They get tests again tomorrow, which is Thursday. They will get the results of those sometime, based on what Eli Drinkwitz has told us, between 1:26 and 6:34 in the morning on Friday morning. Those are the two times I remember that he has told us he found out. But I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, Mitch. But my impression in listening to Drinkwitz talk on Tuesday was, we're going to play this game. And if that means we have to say Kobe Whiteside is playing when we know he's not playing, or Xavier Delgado is playing when he's probably not playing, or that Boo Smith is a scholarship player when he's not really a scholarship player, or that we have to play this game with 49 scholarship players, that's fine. But we intend to play the game. I mean, that's the impression I got.
I think you're probably right. No, I do think it's contingent upon, this last round of COVID testing. I could see a scenario in which, you've got one or two positives, and that puts 6 to 10 guys in contact tracing where they're just like, yeah, okay, we can't do it now. Or if it's, the wrong guys, if it dips under 53 and the guys who go into contact tracing are guys who aren't really playing, that's a different story than if you got, Case Cook and Michael Mayetti in contact tracing when you already have 2 starting linemen out. So, but yes, my impression is, they're going to be right around that 53 number, probably a little under it once you factor in injuries. But Missouri wants to play and is doing everything it can to play. And yeah, barring a couple more a few more contact traced players, I think they will play.
Because the impression I got, and look, I'm putting words in people's mouths and making things up at this point. I'm not making them up, but I am garnering impressions that people didn't actually say. But I listened to Greg Sankey on the SEC teleconference last week talk about the contact tracing and about how we didn't put these rules in place. We're just following them. I have talked to enough people. I think people are sick of this. I think they think the rules are too restrictive and it's bothering them, but there's really nothing they can do. I actually talked to one person. I said, tell me if I'm wrong here. My impression is that in order to play football in a situation where you are taking advantage of unpaid labor to put millions of dollars in the bank account, you had to make some concessions and say, yes, we'll abide by these rules in order to do that. And now those rules, we knew from day one, they were kind of ridiculous and over restrictive, but they are what they are, and you have to follow them, and that's what all these teams have done. And now it's put them at a point where the SEC literally has nowhere to put a game. If Missouri and South Carolina don't play this weekend, then Missouri and South Carolina just aren't playing. I mean, I haven't seen an official announcement that the SEC has rearranged the schedule, but I'm pretty sure they're going to switch games to make LSU and Alabama play at some point, which means there may be another game that gets sacrificed. I mean, we're at the point where we got to understand not everybody's going to have 10 games at the end of the year, probably.
Right. Yeah. And, they didn't make the exact announcement that LSU Alabama is going to be played, but last week basically announced, all matchups after this coming weekend are subject to, review and will be finalized the Monday beforehand, basically saying we're going to rearrange things. But yeah, I mean, we said right when the protocols came out, like, oh man, 14 days for a close contact, you can't test out. That's going to be a problem. And I think if there's one thing that these schools would like to change about the protocols, it is that, going to something like the NFL, where if you have 5 negative tests, or if you're, quarantined for 7 to 10 days, you can get out, which means, because a lot of one of the issues we've seen is if you have an outbreak, your team is out for 2 weeks, basically. It's what happened with Vanderbilt, what happened with Florida, what's happening now with Texas A&M. So yeah, I mean, it's the protocols are an issue. They're pretty restrictive, and I don't think, you can't change them at this point in the season, I don't think. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of what we signed up for. This is what, it's not ideal, but kind of what I thought, we all thought was best case scenario was, you get to the SEC championship, even though it's not all equal.
And they'll get there one way or another. They're going to get there. But it kind of like you're talking about the protocols. What I don't understand is why Nick Saban can test negative 3 times and go coach, but Mac Jones can't, or, whoever would have been out for Missouri.
I do think a player that has a false positive could do that. Like a player that tests positive will then get retested. And if it's deemed a false positive,
as opposed to a player who simply tested negative,
right,
which is
it's
ridiculous.
It doesn't make a ton of sense. But I will say, like, the double standard for Saban thing, I don't think is legit, because remember earlier this season when Drinkwitz said we're going to have 12 players out for contact tracing, and then like a few days later it was 7 because one of the tests was deemed a false positive. Okay. So that is happening for players, but it is. I mean, yeah, it's clearly. I mean. I don't think you'll find really anyone who will argue that the 14-day quarantine that you can't test out of is necessary.
Actually, the Big Ten would argue. They believe it should be 21.
Well, that's true.
That's a different deal. So Ghost Talk is asking, are you hearing anything about rescheduling the Georgia game December 19th? ? And I mean, nobody's actually said it, right? Because they can't say it out loud until Georgia officially can't play in the SEC title game, which probably takes another 2 weeks. Although I'm not sure Georgia's going to play this weekend because apparently Mississippi State is absolutely up against it. And very close to not being able to field a team. That's who Georgia's supposed to play. So I've had people across the league like, hey, is Missouri going to play? Because if Missouri doesn't play, can the team I cover maybe play that team and this and that? So, but December 19th at this point is what we expect for that game, right?
Yeah, there's a chance, like if Georgia, loses another game elsewhere, maybe they could slide that game to December 12th and then have Missouri and Vanderbilt play on December 19th. And whoever Vanderbilt was supposed to play on the 19th, they play on the 12th because they had already had 2 games postponed. So, I mean, yeah, they will play some combination of Georgia and Vanderbilt on December 12th and 19th.
Unless Mississippi State gets moved back or Arkansas. They won't play anybody probably other than Mississippi State, Arkansas, Vanderbilt, or Georgia. We just don't know exactly when. So, or maybe they'll just start playing games on like Thursday afternoon.
I'd be all right with it.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. So we'll get to kind of more of the things and about Missouri and around the league here in a minute, but want to roll through a couple of the questions real quick. Ed is asking, with the NCAA extending the blackout, does that help or hurt Mizzou recruiting? And so for anybody that doesn't know what Ed is talking about, the NCAA has come out and said there is no in-person contact for recruiting in Division I through April 15th, which makes it what, Mitch? 13 months and a day, I think. I think it was like March 14th last year that they said everything's off.
Yeah, 13 months, more than a year for sure.
Okay.
Which is, it's wild. I mean, basically, there no prospects can visit campus unless it's on their own dime and they don't interact with staffs. No staffs can visit prospects in their homes or at their schools.
So we're basically going to turn this show into you explain to me stupid rules about COVID in college sports. So we can have 2 teams on the field with 2 coaching staffs. We can have 11,700 people in the stands, but God forbid one of them be a high school football player who might want to spend the next 5 years of his life in Columbia, Missouri, playing for Eli Drinkwitz, who he's never met other than on a Zoom call.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I don't get that one. I could see the argument for no coaches being able to travel,
sure.
right? Like you can do a lot of the evaluation online and the Zoom calls and stuff like that. And like I don't and also
right. Ed Orgeron does not have to have 7 different gumbos in various cities in Louisiana
right.
in 1 week. Right.
Absolutely. And if you're a coach and you bring in a kid who you find out you misevaluated, well, that already happens every year. They just move on from them after a year. If for a college kid, the stakes are a bit higher. It's not as easy. I mean, it's getting easier to transfer, but it's still not as easy. And it's a bigger decision. I mean, coaches bring in 25 kids every year. Kids only pick one school. So I don't understand, people. I mean, I think, personally, if people are willing to travel and make the trip, you should have some way for them to at least see the college in person and meet the coaching staff.
And Ed's question was if it will help or hurt Mizzou. I just want to say I don't think it has any effect because everybody is dealing with this. So I want to make sure we answer the question before we continue to rant about the stupidity of this, because look, here's what's going to happen. The NCAA is still going to have them sign letters of intent. They're not going to say, oh, you don't have to sign one this year. Those letters of intent are binding for 1 year. Come December, I think it's like December 16th, something like that is the opening.
Something like that.
Yeah, it's the opening of the early signing period for football. I promise that every football coach in Division I, yes, including Eli Drinkwitz, even though I know every program in the country is dirty and Missouri does everything the right way all the time, even Eli Drinkwitz is going to be telling kids, yes, we want you to sign on December 16th. And if you don't, we cannot promise that you have a spot here on February 3rd or whatever signing day is. So they are telling 17-year-old kids who are coming to play for free, we are going to bind you to this school for a year, which you've never seen, where you've never met the players, never met the coaches, never met the kids in your class. You have to come, and I understand you can transfer without penalty probably come next year. I think they should be able to transfer that week. Like if Missouri is playing Tennessee on a Saturday and some freshman signed with Missouri in December, and this is week 4 and he doesn't really love it, he should be able to transfer and play for Tennessee against Missouri on Saturday if he makes that decision on Tuesday. That's what they should do.
That would be exciting. That'd be exciting for us. I mean, like just more storylines. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, uh, I do like that they're moving on to this one-time transfer exemption. I know it's going to make things a little bit crazy, but yeah, I mean, it's just expecting basically changing the going to a dead period, changing the way recruiting is done, but not changing the way signing happens. It just makes no sense to me.
Right, and I want to reiterate, like, the NCAA has said for years and years and years. Let's go through the line of all the. I didn't put an explicit warning on this show, so all the stuff that the NCAA has said. We can't have games during finals week, right? Well, that's done. We're playing games during finals week. We can't travel too much. We can't move these schedules around. All that. Well, that's all crap.
We have to schedule games 18 years in advance.
Right. We want to make sure the kids get a break, right? I mean, you don't want to take Christmas. And forget Christmas, man. They better be here to practice for the Cheez-It Bowl or whatever that's been renamed. So that's out the window. It's just all they're not here for the student athlete. They've never been here for the student athlete. They're here, and this includes the athletic departments. Look, they do good things for kids. I'm not saying they don't, but they're all here to cash their $43 million check from the SEC, which means you get as many football games on TV as you can. And hey, if that means some kids, you tell them to hit the road, and you tell some other kids, yeah, you got to sign without ever having seen campus, they don't really care. They care about having the games to put on TV to get the checks to pay to, in the middle of a pandemic, while every team in the country is screaming that they have no money, to pay Will Muschamp $13 million to not work again. This is college sports, man.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, you summed it up pretty well. I will say I spent 4 years as a swimmer at Mizzou, and we would go home for Christmas, but Mizzou has like an insanely long winter break. It's like 5 weeks, so we would be back on campus for like 3 weeks after Christmas, and it was just like totally empty, cold, and lonely and miserable. Like, students are gonna be gone from this Friday until like mid-January. Like, the student athletes have to stick around for that. That stinks.
I'm actually not sure they're gonna be gone though, because class is online. But if you told me when I was 20 years old, if you told me like campus is open, I mean, you can come back and live, you got to go to class online, but you know what I'm doing? I'm coming back to class, and I'm going to the bars until they close at 10 o'clock, and then I'm going to parties, because that's what college kids do. It would actually be a great time to be a college student in Columbia, because, what do I want to do? Go home and spend 2.5 months at my parents' house? Absolutely not. I would 100% come back to Columbia or to Oxford or Knoxville or wherever. It's all just... I don't know, man. And I hate that this is what we talk about every week, right? Is all these things. Yeah. But it's just not really a football season. There's just some games here. I mean, Saturday, Missouri's playing for the third time in 42 days. And, I do think I need to say this too. Like, yes, we understand we make our living off college athletics. So saying that the whole thing is stupid is a little bit disingenuous, right? But, I mean, the whole thing is stupid. It's one of those deals. Taco Bell tastes pretty good. But if you ever knew somebody who worked at Taco Bell, that dude never wanted to eat Taco Bell, right? So the more you know about the way these things work, the harder it is to actually be invested in it. And, again, we're very happy people are invested in it. Like, we aren't doing a show or cashing checks if they aren't invested, but some of when there's this much hypocrisy and stupidity, at some point you got to call it out. And like us doing it on this little show doesn't do a whole lot of good. Dan Wetzel ripping the NCAA up one side and down the other on Yahoo Sports with his 1 million followers or whatever, that does a little bit more good. If you haven't read Dan's column, you should do it. Case wants to know, at some point, probably next football season, will they just rip the Band-Aid off because they can't handle the revenue and other losses? So let's talk about the good news. The good news is there have been a couple of reports that there are vaccines that preliminarily look pretty effective. And I don't want to get into a political discussion or decide whether this vaccine is actually going to cure COVID and it's all going to go away. But I think what it's going to do is give a lot of these places cover to say, okay, now we have something that can prevent it. So anyone who wants to come, we are welcoming you back with the understanding that you're going to take a risk. So assuming these vaccines come out and are somewhat readily available in the spring, like people are talking about, yes, next football season, I think you're going to have regular games and regular recruiting and I don't want to say capacity crowds, but at least much relaxed restrictions.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, all these athletic departments hope so. Because another year of this it would be maybe untenable for a lot of places. Yeah. I mean, I think at a certain point, I would, again, who knows what the vaccine situation is going to actually look like, how readily available it'll be, how effective it'll be. If that means all of a sudden, 6 feet isn't a big deal anymore. I don't know. But I mean, at a certain point, just for finance sake, that these athletic departments need to be able to fill stadiums and play 12 games instead of 10. So we'll see.
Because the next step,
I don't know how many could survive another year like this.
I mean, the next step is the swim team goes away, the track team goes away, the tennis team goes away, the golf team goes away. Then you start getting soccer, volleyball. Then you get bigger and bigger sports go away. There's only one that we know will never go away, right? Maybe two.
Yeah. Two, probably, yeah.
Yeah. So, and they will have an NCAA tournament in some form. I mean, they didn't accidentally trademark Battle in the Bubble and then bring up the idea of everyone playing in Indianapolis. This was not I mean, they make bad decisions on the fly, but this was one they considered for a little bit. So there's going to be an NCAA tournament in some form this year. And I don't know if we're ever getting back to normal. I assume at some point we will, but like we're getting back to a hell of a lot more normal than the last 2 or 3 months have been. So one more on this topic, and then we've got a bunch of questions and comments that are about other subjects that we'll get to. But David said, just kind of a comment, I generally thought the NCAA would have some sort of power reckoning this year. Same with the universities, I guess not. So I kind of went through the same thing that David did earlier this week, where all along I've kind of said, nobody's probably getting fired. Like there might be a couple guys that get fired, but they were probably going to get fired anyway and all that. So this week in college athletics, Will Muschamp was paid $13 million to not work for, I mean, he hasn't been great. He basically was Barry Odom at South Carolina, which is not great, but
more insane that he got paid that much money than he got fired.
Correct.
Certainly.
But not to the point where you think in the middle of a pandemic and a financial crisis, it's worth $13 million. And like, we need to be clear. The University of South Carolina athletic department is not coughing up $13 million out of its budget in all likelihood. They got a call from, the owner of the caboose or whoever it is that said, look, I'm done with this crap. I want a good football team. Here's $13 million. Fire Will Muschamp, or here's a certain amount of it. But then at the same time in Wichita this week, Greg Marshall was paid $7.75 million with basically a note that said, please quit abusing college kids. Here's $7.75 million to do that. I really did think, and we've had this conversation with baseball forever, and it's never really changed, so I don't know why I thought it would change here. But I really thought there would be like a reset, and we wouldn't see these, here, Eli Drinkwitz, you went 11-1 in 1 year as a head coach. Here's $24 million to be a coach. I thought it was going to reset. This week proved to me it's not going to reset. We're going to keep doing this.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've seen kind of little hints of this all along, like, all through the summer and everything. It was like, oh, man, this is so different. I wonder what the lasting effects are going to be. But then, like, first week teams start playing, like Kansas State loses, their fans want to fire their coach. Iowa State loses, their fans want to fire their coach. Like, there was no sense of like, oh, yeah, this was a normal season. It's just back to, the emotions of college sports, which is what drives this whole thing. And then, still seeing none of the leagues willing to work together. Or, I mean, there's been a little bit more flexibility in scheduling, but that just by necessity. I mean, like, you're not seeing any flexibility when it comes to moving the postseason or changing the outdated bowl system. Some of the things that people theorized could come out of this pandemic. No, I don't think it's happening.
Yeah, and Case says, I don't mean to sound selfish, but I'm tired of this. I miss being able to have my soul ripped out by Mizzou. But, like, it's a good point. Like I've said, and for those people who are into this season and, like, actually even more looking forward to it than they normally would, That's great, man. I'm glad that you've been able to find that. I kind of did that with the Masters this week. Like I watched almost every shot. I sat and watched like 10 hours of golf on Friday, and it was great. Um, but as far as college football goes, I've just kind of had a hard time getting into it or putting as much into it as I have for the last 17 seasons because it just seems kind of fake. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like a real thing to me.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just think like, usually I feel like I'm able to think back like, oh yeah, when did this happen? It was however long ago, and it's hard to keep track. And we obviously get, we follow the team very closely because it's our jobs. But I was talking to one person this weekend who was like, yeah, like it's just like kind of depressing. Like I like sat down today and turned on my TV thinking Mizzou was going to be on and they weren't. And then I like, tried to flip over at all these other football games and they all weren't on. It's just like, well, I guess I'm finding something else to do today. Like it's hard to be invested.
I mean, like San Diego State is playing at 2:30 on CBS this weekend. That's okay. Whatever. I will not watch that game. All right. Danny Ragland says that I've mentioned how underrated Marcus Denman was. What other players come to mind who were that underrated in football and basketball? Like, I've always called James Franklin the most underrated Missouri football player I think I've covered. Denman in basketball kind of the same way because I think people understood how good he was, but maybe didn't fully understand how good he was and how much he meant to those teams. It's kind of hard the last few years really to, like, since you've been covering them, to identify underrated players because, like, I mean, they haven't been that good, right? I mean, how much can you underrate guys that are playing on a 7-6 team?
Yeah, exactly. When you think of underrated players, you tend to think back to, the best teams in recent memory, which is exactly what you just did. Mentioned the last time football was good and basketball was good. So yeah, I don't know. Since I arrived at school, I saw the final year of James Franklin's career, but there's no one like leaping to mind all of a sudden that I'm like, oh yeah, that person was way under. I mean, like the whole offensive line that 2013 and then into 2014 was really good, and I think people didn't realize it at the time. But
yeah, like
that's as close as I'm coming up with. Yeah.
Right. I mean, like Lee Coward was underrated, but we're going back to 1989 here, So yeah, let's get some more underrated guys up here. I think that would help. All right. Well, this is like Power Mizzou's favorite subject now. The basketball season's here, and I want to be clear, K-Long. Neither of us has any idea what's going to happen to Kansas basketball. I mean, I don't know. Maybe Mitchell does because a member of his family pays closer attention to it than I do, I think, for his job. But, look, Kansas is going to get in trouble. I mean, there's no question at this point. Kansas is going to get in trouble, and whenever they make a decision, and I don't think it's before this NCAA tournament, but the first NCAA tournament that happens after that decision, I'm pretty sure is going to happen without Kansas playing in it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous that it's taken so long. And I understand this was all complex, but it's like the NCAA has totally lost its ability to actually, like, I feel like really punish, obviously the people involved and make any sort of a statement. Because now it's been 3 full years, more than 3 full years since this stuff started.
Bill Self's grandson is going to get a show cause.
Yeah, that said, I mean, yeah, they're going to get in trouble. I still think that it's going to be significant. I mean, every punishment we've seen come out of this, FBI stuff has been significant, although there have been very few. I think Oklahoma State might even be the only
been
one.
Punished yet?
Oklahoma State got a 1 year of probation for their assistant, like, kind of doing nothing. I mean, he took a bribe or something like that, but it wasn't like directly tied to any player who actually went there. So like clearly they're trying to, dole out big punishments. I think Kansas will probably end up with, at least one, my guess is maybe 2 years of probation. I mean, of postseason ban, several years of probation. The big question, and I think what makes it a legitimate, punishment, like something that really impacts the program for years to come, is how Bill Self is impacted. Mm-hmm. Like if it's enough to get him to leave, like you're like, wow, that program is maybe never going to be the same, or at least not immediately going to be the same. If it's a year off from the postseason, like, yeah, that kind of sucks, but I don't think that will really like drastically inhibit recruiting to the point that, that the Kansas isn't going to continue to be Kansas.
So David says they punished Louisville pretty good. Has Louisville gotten there?
Different deal. That was the That was the escort scandal. Louisville still hasn't gotten theirs, I don't think, from this one.
You've really got to kind of parse when you're talking about Louisville
Luckily,
scandals. I mean, there's been a lot of them.
my Louisville scandals pretty well because I can understand the mix-up.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a mess. So Tucker wants to know how transfers are going to impact the 2021 roster numbers, meaning how do those count toward a yearly limit, and will taking more transfers be able to get them closer to 85? So I did a bunch of Googling about this, which is the way you answer everything these days, a few weeks ago to answer a question in the mailbag. And maybe, Mitch, if this is incorrect. Basically, the 25 is what is called, you can have 25 initial counters, which means a player who is on scholarship at a Division I university for the first time. So I think transfers don't technically count against that 25. Now, I don't know that you could bring in 15 of them in 1 year, but like there are ways to go over 25, and I'm not sure if transfers count. I kind of think they don't, but I could be wrong.
My impression has always been that they do. Okay. And because I'm thinking back to times where, like, people would bring up like, oh, look, this person's available. And then like we'd maybe ask and they'd be like, no, we can't. We literally can't. We have 25. My understanding is this. You can date back some early enrollees. So, every year some guys enroll early and start school in January and go through spring ball. And if you didn't take 25 the year prior, you can date back, if enough, enroll early enough, however many that gets you to 25 the year before, then take 25 the next year. But that includes transfers.
Okay.
But I mean, I could be wrong, but that's always been my impression.
Well, and the problem with figuring this out is you have to know which class every kid counts in, and we don't know that. Because you have to, like, some early enrollees count backwards, but some don't, and only the people in charge really know that, and they don't tell us. Yes. So Missouri's going to sign more than 25 this year. I don't know how many more, but I'm pretty confident they will at some point go over 25 in this class. Ed actually asked a really interesting question that I hadn't thought about. Are there any non-revenue sports to pay attention to this winter? And I mean, women's basketball is playing. They start, I think, the day after Thanksgiving. We'll have some stuff up on them in the next few days. But he says, is wrestling going to happen? Now I hadn't thought about that. How can you possibly? I mean, given all these rules, how can you have wrestling?
I guess you just test, and then you hope that no one tests positive right after a match, because if they did, the person they wrestled is out too.
Unless they got pinned in like 14 seconds.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe if you really suck, you can wrestle maybe just by process of elimination, like everyone else is going to be out by contact tracing, and some dude that's like 1-26 is going to win the NCAA title.
Maybe they'll just assume that by mid-season of the wrestling season, which is like January, that everyone will have had it. I don't know. That seems like as good of a strategy as any.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard that it's off, but look, this is everything we're talking about, right? So, yeah, you can test negative on Thursday and wrestle on Saturday, but that doesn't mean you're going to test negative on Tuesday. And if you test positive on Tuesday, maybe you had it on Saturday. And then, so I don't see, unless they change rules, I don't really see how you could have wrestling. I mean, I don't know. Is the WWE still going on? Or are they still doing that every week?
I have no idea. That's not. I know UFC is still going. I remember because they bought the island.
Right.
I mean, I think their deal is just like we're testing every day. So
I'm going to go out on a limb actually and say WWE and UFC, like, they don't really much care about the rules or probably about this virus.
No, I think they basically were like, we're gonna buy our island and if you're the type of person who likes to watch,
and we might all have it.
Right. If you're the type of person who likes to watch people club each other to death, you probably don't care about, the virus.
Which one of them has COVID. Right. Yeah. I didn't really expect this to turn into a pro wrestling show, but if you guys want to talk about like Jake the Snake Roberts or Coco Beware, I'm good.
Yeah. The question was about non-revenue sports to watch in the winter. We always got to watch the swimming and diving team. I don't know anything about them, but I was a member of that team, so that's my shout out.
I do know they have a meet the next 3 days.
Yeah,
I know that I know it's
the
normally a
annual
meet with like 12 teams and there are 3 teams. So
yeah, the annual Thanksgiving invite. Yeah,
yeah.
usually a fast meet.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Scrolling through. Okay. We're catching up on these, so we were talking about golf. Tiger or Phil, which one wins a major again first? Like, I think after this weekend, I am firmly on the neither one of them ever wins another major team.
I mean, yeah, that's the safer bet. If one of them is going to, it's going to be Tiger. I mean,
Phil
Phil
looked
is
really good.
Phil is
He shot
he's
one of the better
irrelevant.
79s I've ever seen.
He's so irrelevant. I mean, it's fine. I don't know. I've disliked Phil less and less as he stopped winning things because he's entertaining, but there's no chance I don't think he can stay in it mentally long enough to win a 4-day major.
He could
Tiger
barely
probably
stay in
can't
it mentally long enough when he was good to win a major.
Yeah, that's true. Tiger, it would take unusual circumstances, but I mean, I firmly thought he never would again before last year's Masters, so I won't say it's totally impossible, but the safer bet would be neither.
Right, it's got to kind of line up. Like, he might win some British Open where it's like 7,000 mile an hour winds, and
Yeah,
like he's just
that's
smarter than everybody.
That's always kind of what I've said. If Tiger's going to win another one, other than Augusta, which we saw happen, I've said for a few years, if he's going to win one, it's going to be one of those ridiculous British Opens that, of course, he's played before, where you have to hit the low stinger every time.
So I know very few people got on here to listen to us talk about golf, but you know what? It's our shows, and we like golf. So what's more incredible, that Tiger got a 10 on a par 3, or that he then birdied 5 of the next 6 holes?
It's definitely birdieing 5 of the next 6 holes, because I've gotten 10s on par 3s all the time, but I've never birdied 5 holes out of 6.
I mean, if I get a 10 on a par 3, like, I'm legit saying, give me the beer, I'm done. I'm just going to ride along and drink for the last 5 holes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely not all of a sudden going birdieing. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, probably really it's more unlikely that, a PGA Tour player would get a 10, but I'm more impressed by the 5 birdies in 6 holes.
Yeah. Tucker says that wrestlers practice in pods only with a few kids. I mean, that's fine, but I still think, like, the match, I mean, I guess the match doesn't last 15 minutes, but I don't really think you need, like, they're sweating directly on each other. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know that it takes
the
15 minutes.
15-minute rule might not apply for that versus like standing within 6 feet. I don't know. I'm not an expert here.
Yeah. So, all right. So this one is clearly for Mitch. How much longer is Drew Lock going to get?
Oh man.
I mean,
so
at
yeah,
least
Drew
this
Lock.
season, right?
Yes. So to start off with, he's absolutely starting every game. He's healthy for the rest of this season. It might not be this coming one. Apparently, he's pretty banged up. Here's the thing with Drew Lock. It's tough because he hasn't played a lot. He missed almost all of last year, and he's missed games this year due to injury. And he's definitely not hopeless. You see the signs. He's got a great arm. He makes a few throws every game that are awesome. He's a tough kid. He's easy to like.
This sounds like me talking about Drew Lock in 2016.
100%. You cannot be an NFL quarterback and throw twice as many interceptions as you do touchdowns. I think he's thrown 10 interceptions and 7 touchdowns this season. Like, that's just not going to get it done. And also the other thing is, like I was saying, like, maybe that you chalk this up to a lack of experience, but also, like, for those of us who have followed Drew Lock, it's kind of some of the same stuff. I mean, he deals so poorly with pressure. And that's no secret at this point. Like, Denver's offensive line is not good by any means, but I don't think it's not the worst in the league. And also at this point, it's like it partially is on the quarterback to recognize this pressure and get the ball out of his hands. And he's not doing that. When pressure comes, he just tends to just either get sacked or throw something up off his back foot and it gets intercepted. And, once defenses in the NFL kind of smell blood on that, I think it's hard to correct it, especially with a, less than stellar offensive line. So I think pretty much the rest of this season for the Broncos is dedicated to finding out if he can be the guy. And if he is, he probably leads them to like a, 7-9 record and they, try for a run again next year. If he's not, that means they probably finish like 4-12 or something, and they're drafting good enough to maybe take one of these quarterbacks.
So they're what, 3-6 right now? Is that right?
Yes,
something like that. So here's their problem, though. There's no way they're going to have a top 2 pick. I mean, they're not going.
Right.
They can lose out. They're not having a top 2 pick.
This has been the Broncos every year. Yeah, right. They end up between like pick 5 and 15.
So Trevor Lawrence is gone. Justin Fields is gone. They're not getting those guys without trading, and they don't have enough to trade to do it unless they mortgage the future, and then you're drafting a quarterback and putting nothing around him. So, I mean, then you're in a situation where you're going, is Mac Jones or Kyle Trask or Trey Lance? We're giving up on Drew Lock already for that. I mean, maybe they will, but to me that seems kind of dumb. But I think what's working against Drew right now is NFL teams have found out in the last few years that you don't win Super Bowls without an elite quarterback. I'm not a good quarterback, an elite quarterback. Like, I can't remember the last quarterback who you would say he's clearly not a top 10 quarterback in the league who won a Super Bowl, right? It's been...
Yeah, I mean, whenever Flacco won
maybe Joe
Flacco,
and at the time he was arguably a top 10 guy in the league. So the point is, you've got to have that guy. And in the NFL is a little bit different than college, right? College, you're going, hey man, maybe he's not winning a national title, but we're 9-3, and that's really good. In the NFL, if you're not competing to win the Super Bowl, then it doesn't matter. Your best bet is actually to be 1-15 and go get that guy. Like 7-9 sucks in the NFL. 8-8 sucks. 10-6 and making the playoffs but being no threat to do anything sucks. So you don't just have to be, he's a good solid starter. Like, they have to see something out of him in the next year and a half that says he's elite. He's Justin Herbert level good. Because that's a kid who's younger than Drew who's playing better. He's Joe Burrow level good. Again, a kid who's younger than Drew who's playing better. He's Tua good. He's Kyler Murray good. I mean, these are young guys, year one, year two, who haven't started any more than Drew, who are out playing Drew. And you will not. I spent 4 years basically defending Drew Lock to Missouri fans. I love the kid. I want him to be great. I want him to go like 14-2 and lose in the AFC title game every year. That'd be great. I'd love to see that. But I mean, it's getting close to time, man. I mean, if you don't see something by the end of this year, I don't know that he loses the job, but he goes into next year on like a Will Muschamp level hot seat.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, like you mentioned, I was going to bring up too. Yeah, it's, these days you don't have a lot of time to show that you're the guy at quarterback, especially as a second round pick. I mean, we've seen, Dwayne Haskins, who was a top 15 pick, already, basically benched. Like, you right now people expect to know fast. And with what Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow and guys like that are doing, like, it definitely, it's especially too, and you look around the Broncos division, like, you're going to have to score points. It definitely puts a little bit more urgency on them to figure that out.
I mean, Kyler Murray's in the MVP talk, and he came out the same year. Hot shoulders, which reminds me that we haven't heard from Bob Douglas yet tonight. I hope Bob has recovered from COVID and is okay. But I always underrated Mitch Morse. I thought he was bad at football when he was yanked from the starting center position. That's one of the better stories, actually, is that Mitch Morse couldn't snap the ball. And I fully admit he couldn't snap the ball. But, he's gone on to a heck of a pro career. And, just as a guy who really likes Mitch, I hope he retires after this year. He's got another concussion, and, he got to quit playing football pretty soon. Right?
Yeah, he's made a lot of money for himself, too. At one point, I think he was the highest paid center in NFL history. Yeah. So, yeah, good dude. So.
Yeah. Okay. So this question is up our alley. Best wings in Como. It's clearly CJ's, right?
Yeah.
You're not gonna
it's CJ's, but the issue is you never know if you can get in there.
And that has nothing to do with COVID.
No, that has to do with their normal hours. I don't know what their hours even are right now. I've been once, and they happened to be open.
They're open from 1:15 to 2:45 Tuesdays, Thursdays, and every other Saturday.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, but they're clearly the best. D Rose has really good wings.
I was going to bring them up as an alternate style. D Rose, the smoked wings.
Shiloh has really good wings. Speaking of local businesses, make sure to go 573tees.com. Again, that's TES for the spelling challenged. 573tees.com. They sponsor this show every Wednesday. Normally it's a lot more Mizzou-centric, but hey, we're letting you guys guide it. We'll talk about whatever we want. We can just come here and hang out every Wednesday. Not next week. Next week it'll be Tuesday because I will be at the riveting Missouri Oral Roberts basketball game on Wednesday night. First sporting event I will have covered live in 8 months and 18 days by that point. It was March 7th. I was at the basketball game against Alabama.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
pretty exciting.
And then
You
everything,
gonna get like
yeah,
some
I mean,
nachos or something?
I really was just waiting for just put Oral Roberts on the schedule and I'll show up again. Like if they'd have played Oral Roberts in football, I 100% would have been there with the praying hands statue and everything. I would have done that.
Yeah.
All right. Drew Lock's arm plus Chase Daniels intangibles would be an insane I think just Drew Lock's arm plus Chase Daniels accuracy. Like I think that's Drew's problem is he's not very accurate. You know?
Yeah, he's not very accurate, and he does struggle, I think, with pressure and with reading it before the snap and reacting to it.
Yeah. I love the fact that sports fans still can have issues with singular play calls like years and years later. Travis says, remember when Dooley had Drew Lock run the option with the game on the line against Oklahoma State? I do because we were both there. And I think we both had a very similar reaction to Travis, which is, what the hell are they doing?
Yeah. I will say this is in no way a defense of that play call, but there was a moment this year that reminded me. I had like such a distinct, immediate deja vu flashback. It was when Mizzou was at the end of that like 97 play drive against Kentucky, and they got down to 4th and 1, and clearly there was some sort of busted play where Connor Bazelak was trying to make a man miss on the edge on 4th and 1 and got tackled for a 3-yard loss. And I was like, I've seen that play before.
Yes. And I think the one in the Liberty Bowl actually came closer to working than the one against Kentucky did. But yeah, but Missouri was actually winning the Kentucky game at that point, which was,
right. Different situations.
Which was a major change, just simply that they were beating Kentucky. All right, so let's talk SEC football. Like right now, there are 6 games scheduled, I think,
for this weekend, yes.
Okay, so nothing has been called off.
One game's been called off, the A&M game.
That right. So 6 still scheduled. How many of those do we think get played?
Oh man, I don't know. We've made it pretty far into the week. Like usually by this point in the week, we've heard they're not. So I'm going to say 5. I'll say 1. There's enough that are close that one of them's going over the edge. But I'm being optimistic, and I'm saying 5.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot about Mississippi State, which indicates to me maybe Mississippi State, Georgia's in jeopardy, but like Vanderbilt is in jeopardy every week. But again, I go back to I think the SEC has told these teams, like, you've got to give us a really good reason not to play. We don't have anywhere to put these games. And hey, we only have 52 guys doesn't really qualify as a really good reason. Now, hey, we would have to put a running back at quarterback. Okay, that's a good enough reason.
Right. We'd have 3 defensive linemen, which is what Missouri was apparently down to last weekend. Like that qualifies.
We have we only have 11 guys, and they would all have to play both ways, and our quarterback would have to punt. That qualifies. But like if you can get close to 53, I think teams are being told we need you to play, and so I think the vast majority of them are going to do that. Ed wants to know who's the second best team in the SEC. This is kind of weird because Texas A&M beat them head to head, but I actually think Florida is the second best team in the SEC.
I do too. Yeah, I mean, I agree. It wasn't on that one day, and that's what matters for the I guess long-term discussions maybe about comparing them head to head. Although I don't really think they'll ever be compared head to head by the playoff committee, because if Florida loses again, it's a 2-loss team. It's probably not getting in.
But what about this?
And if it wins,
what about if A&M goes 9-1, Florida gets to the SEC title game at 9-1, beats Alabama, so Florida's 10-1 with a win over Alabama. Alabama's 10-1, and A&M's sitting there 9-1 with the only loss to Alabama. Like A&M's just screwed?
I mean, Florida is number 1 out of those choices. Obviously, a league champion beat Alabama head-to-head for the playoff picks. I still think Alabama's number 2. I mean, they beat A&M by 30.
28. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Florida A&M's best chance is that Alabama runs the table and that there's no other good 4th team.
Right. I'm pretty clearly on board with anything that leaves A&M out of the playoffs. So I would support that. But yeah, it'll be, we're going to get to, this is going to be the weirdest playoff ever. I mean, look, we all know it's going to be Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, and somebody else anyway. So I don't really know why we're playing a whole season, but does 6-0 Ohio State make the playoff? Like supposed to play more games than that, right? Although they did have one canceled this
Well,
weekend.
they're scheduled to play. They were scheduled to play 7 in the regular season, and then one potential league title game, and they already lost one.
They were only scheduled to play 7. Why did I think they were scheduled to play 8?
I think so. No, you're right. It was 8. It was 8 because Big Pac-12 was 7. I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, but yes, actually, if there's only one team I think that can make it at 6-0, and it is Ohio State. Maybe I don't know. I wouldn't put Wisconsin in, even if they run the table and beat Ohio State. And I don't know that I'd put Ohio State in at 6-0, but they would make it.
I mean, like if Ohio State's 6-0, their best win is what, Wisconsin?
If they both play in the league title game.
So they don't play in the regular season.
No.
So who's
their
Ohio
best win?
State
The regular season would be in Indiana.
Oh my god. Because like Michigan's awful. Beating Michigan doesn't count. Somebody asked earlier. I meant to put it up
Penn
here.
State.
Yeah,
Penn State also awful.
Yeah, Penn State doesn't count. Michigan State doesn't count. So Ohio State's going to go 6-0 with no good wins. Beat Wisconsin in the title game, and they're going to get in the playoff because back in August people decided they were good. Right?
That's I mean, probably. Yeah, that's probably what's going to happen. I mean, they were good last year at least, but yeah.
Can we just go back to the part where we were talking about how stupid college sports are? Because that's where we're at again. Somebody was asking about Harbaugh at Michigan. I don't know how he comes back. Like that. That's pretty poor.
Yeah, I mean they're a trade wreck. I watched like 4 plays of their game last weekend because it was already a blowout by the time I turned it on. But yeah, they're a train wreck.
All right, Ed wants to know how many points you'd have to pick Florida to cover against Alabama. I'm not sure I need that many. Like, I think that might be a good game because I think Florida's going to score most times it gets the ball.
I think that'll be a good game for sure. And I think this is just like kind of conservative nature talking, but if I see Florida losing by 6 or something? Yes. But to actually pick them and like put money on them, I think I'd need like 13, 12.5, 13.5, something like that.
I'm sure this is out there somewhere, but I don't really look at this type of stuff until the week of the game. Like, what's the over/under on Florida Alabama? It's got to be in the 80s.
Yeah, I was gonna say about 80. Yeah, I mean, I think it could, very easily be a 49-42 type of deal.
I mean, Florida scores like 1 out of every 3 plays. I think
Kyle Trask
made that number.
He's having an unbelievable season. He's thrown I think I don't know, 20 touchdowns or something like that.
It's more. I think it's
26.
Yeah, it's more
like 26 touchdowns. He's thrown a touchdown like every 4 attempts or something like that.
It's more than Joe Burrow had through the same number of games last year in the best quarterback season in the history of college football. By the way, they scored 63 points without Kyle Pitts on the field last week. Ed says it better than I can. A perfect time to expand the playoff, but the NCAA hates the fans.
This sounds bad, but they don't really care about the fans as long as they turn on the TV.
Yeah, don't care about the fans, don't care about the players, don't really care about the coaches. I don't know. They care about money though. So good for them. I mean, like, look, I mean, high and mighty us. It's not like we do this for free, but whatever.
Fair point.
So, okay, so I guess next Tuesday night, we're going to do the show Tuesday next week because basketball season starts Wednesday. So we might focus a little more on hoops next week and kind of what we expect out of the season. Football, I don't know. They play South Carolina. Like, South Carolina was awful before their coach got fired and half the team decided not to play anymore. So we would probably expect them to be more awful. It's not like Missouri is going in with a stacked deck here, but last I looked, they were favored by 6, and it sounds weird, but Missouri should win this game. I'm not going to say it's disappointing or a big problem if they don't, but they should win this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think this one pretty much just comes down to who wants to be there more. Both teams have major issues. Missouri. Right. No, they have no reason not to. They should be, I would think, relatively eager to get back on the field, especially, they've had a long layoff after a bad last game. I mean, like, Missouri has apparently working an offensive lineman, a backup offensive lineman, true freshman with the defensive line, and training some wide receivers to play cornerback, and has like 55 players and hasn't played in 21 days. And South Carolina doesn't have a coach and just had 3 of their 4 secondary starters opt out, and also apparently is down in the 50s with players. It's a mess on both sides. But yes, I would favor Missouri, and I think if they lose, it will be one of those things where either they came out and played horribly sloppy because they haven't played in a few weeks, or they just didn't, match kind of the energy in the fight.
Here's what I want to see in this game. Like we're talking about guys moving positions and all that. I want Akil Byers to take a snap at quarterback. That's all I want out of this game. So
here's what I want. I want a defensive line of Drake Heismeyer, Harrison Mevis, Zecor Brooks, and give me a fourth.
I want Zecor Brooks to. Well, Akil Byers said he could play every position, but I want Zecor to play both ends.
Yeah, Zecor's a must. Just a great name.
Yeah,
great name. And Mevis, I'm telling you, if they get in a pinch, he could play defensive tackle. He's got the size.
All right. So let's just run through the other games in the SEC. Like none of them matter anymore. I mean, the SEC title game is virtually done. These games really are just for TV money anyway, which is all they were for to begin with. But all right. So Florida and Vanderbilt. Okay, this is a better question. How many points would Vanderbilt have to get for you to pick Vanderbilt to cover in this game?
Oh, geez. I'd say, let's say, I don't know, 40.5.
Okay. See, I think I'd still pick Florida because I think, like, all these teams in the top 10, they understand we have to make statements the last 6 weeks.
Yeah, you're probably right.
And Dan Mullen is
enough.
Like Nick Saban is, for as much as people think he's a dick and all that, like, he doesn't really humiliate teams. I think Dan Mullen will humiliate.
Unless he's playing Lane Kiffin, but yeah, I mean, like, yeah, you're right. Like, kind of needs to. You almost should, yeah, to build your playoff case. I don't know. Yeah, 40 might not be enough, honestly.
I mean, if you gave me 50 points, I would take Vanderbilt, but I don't know if I'd really feel good about it.
I'd take him at 50. I might take him at at 45. I don't know. 45 is probably a better number than 40.
I'd take him, but I would probably expect to lose my money. Ed says he would need 68 points. So
wow, good number.
Can you imagine Florida winning 70-3 and Ed doesn't cover? That would
be tragic.
That'd be on SVP that night. LSU and Arkansas. I saw this. Brett McMurphy tweeted this out last year in this game. LSU was favored by 39. They're favored by 2 now, but at one point Arkansas was actually favored.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Maybe I'm in love with the name on the front of the jersey. I know LSU sucks. Like, I saw it firsthand, but I think LSU wins this game. Yeah,
I mean, I think so too. And I don't know. They've got, like, every team right now has issues, but yeah, they just have more talent. Like, I don't know. Arkansas has been a fun little story, and they're clearly not a bad team, but if LSU plays with a reasonable amount of effort, I think it should win that game.
Can we agree, though, that, like, this year has proven Chad Morris is never allowed to be a head coach in college football again?
Oh, yeah. And who hired? Oh, yeah. And Auburn hired him to be an offensive coordinator, and they're not exactly lighting the world on fire. Like, he needs to be banned from Division I football.
Yeah. Ed wants to make me a bet over 45 points for Vandy. So, like,
Ed, spread?
Yeah. So, Ed, if I give you 45 points, you will take Vandy, or this is working? I tell you what, email me at powermizzou@gmail.com and tell me exactly which side of this bet you want, and we'll work something out. So I appreciate you watching. I'll give you a free month for commenting and being here, and then the bet might get you a little bit more. Okay, so Kentucky at Alabama, like, that's a terrible game. I don't even want to talk about that. They shouldn't even play.
Yeah, again, giant number. It's just how many points does Alabama feel like scoring?
Yeah, they should say his whole team has COVID and they should not play that game. Yeah. Tennessee at Auburn. Tennessee is like that team that I hate watch them. Like, I want to watch their games just to see them lose. And it's working. It's going well.
Yeah, they've lost a lot. They've actually lost every game since they beat Missouri. You could not convince me to take Tennessee right now. No way. I mean, they could win that game, but I would not pick it because I have not seen it.
And Auburn is the team I root for to win every game because their fans get mad when they do it.
You root for them to win in fluky ways.
Yeah, this is a perfect scenario. I want Auburn to beat Tennessee by like 4 points because Jeremy Pruitt does something so insanely stupid that he hands Auburn a win, and then everybody is super pissed off. That will be the
Yeah, and then neither place fires their coach because they both owe them like $20 million plus.
Right. That would be like me sinking a 60-foot birdie putt. Like I would just walk off the course. I will quit watching SEC football if I can get that to happen on Saturday evening. Mississippi State, Georgia. I pick COVID in this game, but if I have to pick an actual team, I think Georgia's going to win because Mississippi
I think
State
that seems like a safe bet. Yeah. Mississippi State is a dumpster fire.
Yeah, so,
and that concludes our analysis.
Yeah. So, God, those are terrible. Every week is just, even when they play games, they're terrible games.
Kind of, yeah. Games. I mean, yeah, there's really only like 4 good teams in the SEC these days.
Yeah, this was the most depressing hour we've spent in quite some time. I think we just complained about everything and about how bad it is. So appreciate you guys being here and listening to us complain. So we'll do it again next week. Again, Tuesday night next week because they've got basketball on Wednesday night. And I'm actually going to go. And Mitch is going to be on his way to Louisville to eat turkey. And can you still have your flag football game or touch football game?
That's actually TBD. I'm not sure we're going to have enough for that. So it's looking doubtful.
Okay, I just wondered if
it would be a shame.
I'll wondered if the 40 household was putting social distancing rules in place where you couldn't do that.
Yeah, I don't know. Immediate family will be mostly there, but I don't know that we'll have enough cousins and such willing to gather to do that. That's TBD.
Yeah. Well, we have depressed
Tune in next week.
We have depressed Case with this hour of programming. So I apologize, Case. I hope you feel better. Go have a beer. Get on 573tees.com. Buy yourself a new T-shirt. It'll make you feel way better. They've got good T-shirts. Wear it around while you eat your turkey and watch whatever football games might be on television next week. So appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We'll do this every week. We'll continue through basketball season at least. And hopefully after that, who knows? Like we talked about a lot of non-football stuff. So if you guys just want to like come on and talk to us, I don't know. We don't have anything else to do. So we'll do that. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week.